Caesars Palace recently released its win total lines for the upcoming season. A lot of the focus right now is on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots because of, well, Tom Brady. However, the football world is far bigger and more interesting than those two franchises, and that's why we're going to take a look at some of the win total lines that don't look or feel quite right. So here are two overs and two unders you should keep an eye on. The first team we're going to take a look at is the Green Bay Packers, whose win total line for the 2020 season is 8.5. This makes no sense to me. The Packers are coming off a 13-3 season. They haven't done a lot in free agency, but they really only lost Brian Bulaga, and I think they're probably going to address the offensive line in the draft. But this has less about what the Packers have or haven't done in terms of roster building, and more about the division they play in and the other games they have on their schedule in 2020. When you look at the NFC North, it's a mediocre division at best. Chicago has regressed unless you're a big fan of Jimmy Graham. Detroit has made some moves, but it's hard to say they're significantly better heading into the season. Minnesota's probably regressed a little bit from where they were last year, and there just isn't a lot of competition in that division. And when you expand it to the rest of their schedule, they have a lot of winnable games. They're home against Carolina, home against Jacksonville. They go onto the road to face Houston. There's some tough games in there. Obviously, the road game at New Orleans is going to be difficult. They have a couple of hard home games against Tennessee and Philadelphia. But that schedule has far more winnable games than difficult contests. No matter how you look at it, it seems likely the Packers will win at least 9 games in 2020, and probably more than that. They're going into the second year under coach Matt LaFleur. That's going to be more familiarity with his system, and that's always a good thing. That could also mean improved play from Aaron Rodgers, who wasn't great in 2019. If the Packers get better play from Rodgers in 2020, that could help offset some of the regression from guys like Aaron Jones or even the defense, who may not be able to reach the standards they had the year before. And that, of course, gets the team closer to at least winning 9 games. The second over total I have for the 2020 NFL season is the Washington Redskins at 4.5 wins. Look, I can already sense your disbelief, but hear me out on this one. Firstly, new Washington Redskins head coach Ron Rivera has won at least 5 games in every season he has coached at the NFL level, and that includes last year when he got fired with the Panthers. Given the fact that the team will have more talent than it did in 2019, and Dwayne Haskins should at least be marginally better than what we saw last season, you have to think Rivera can at least cajole 2 more victories out of the Redskins in 2020. Of course, the roster isn't great, and I have my concerns about a combination of Adrian Peterson and Peyton Barber running the ball, but there are enough pieces in Washington, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to give you hope that they can stay in games throughout the season. Washington's schedule in 2020 is hardly the most frightening one out there. They get the Cincinnati Bengals and Carolina Panthers at home. They also have a pair of West Coast teams in the Rams and the Seahawks coming to FedEx Field. And if those are 1 p.m. Eastern kickoffs, they do have an advantage there. The Redskins won't be favored in either of those games. But when the West Coast teams travel east, there's always some weird stuff that can happen, and it makes upsets a little more likely. Notable road games for Washington in 2020 include trips to Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. 3 games that are likely to all be close, and you would think the Redskins have a shot of at least getting 1 win and maybe 2 from that. That means really all Washington needs to do is win 1 or 2 NFC East games, maybe 1 of those road games and 2 other home games, and they're at 5. Look, this team isn't going 8-8. They're probably not going 7-9, but 5 or 6 wins seems really easy for Washington to hit this season, and that's why I like them as an over in 2020. Let's move on to some of the unders we're watching in 2020, and we're going to start with the Chicago Bears at 8.5 wins. I cannot fathom why the Packers and the Bears have been set at the same win line. It makes absolutely no sense to me. The Bears, an 8-win team in 2019, have gotten worse since the season ended. Unless you are a huge believer in Nick Foles, whose regular season track record shows that he's probably not the answer, this team is going nowhere, and it's not getting there particularly fast. Bears general manager Ryan Pace did not have a good offseason. Firstly, he signed Jimmy Graham, who probably isn't going to contribute all that much more than Trey Burton does already, and Trey Burton doesn't give them anything. Then he let Leonard Floyd walk in free agency to sign Robert Quinn, a defensive end who doesn't fit in that Bears system. And then to top it all off, the Bears only have 2 second-round draft picks in the first 3 rounds of the upcoming draft. This team isn't going to get better than the 8 wins it did in 2019, so I have no idea why Vegas set this line so high. The Packers will clear 8.5, but the Bears are going under. We're going to close out our video looking at the New York Jets, whose win line total for 2020 has been set at 6.5 wins. I just don't see the Jets getting 7 wins, even though they did it in 2019. Sure, New York made some nice additions to the offensive line that should give Sam Darnold a little more protection, so hopefully he's not seeing ghosts. But who's he throwing the ball to? Robbie Anderson's gone? Is Brashad Perryman truly a wide receiver 1? It looks highly likely the Jets are going to draft either an offensive tackle or a receiver, so that'll solve one problem, but not the other issue they have. Defensively, the Jets are good, but they have question marks on that side of the ball as well. Who's rushing the passer first and foremost? As we all know, Jamal Adams led the team in sacks in 2019. You probably don't want that to happen again this year. They've got to get someone on the defensive line and the linebacking core who can get to the quarterback. Talent issues aside, the 2020 schedule does the Jets 0 favors. The path to 7 wins for the Jets just doesn't seem to be there. They got to that total in 2019 thanks to a really soft schedule. They had wins against the Dolphins, the Redskins, the Giants, and a Bills team in Week 17 that was resting all of its starters. If you look at the 2020 schedule, at home, they have games against Arizona, Las Vegas, and Denver, and those are all winnable. And then on the road, maybe you could see them getting wins at Indy or against either one of the Los Angeles teams, but those are far from locks. Then you have the Jets' AFC East rivals, the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. New England looks to be declining, Miami on the rise. The Jets aren't as good as either one of those 2 teams, so that's going to make the season series interesting. Even if they got 2 wins from those 4 games, are they getting 5 other wins in their schedule to get to 7 wins? This is why I just don't see the Jets hitting the over of 6.5 wins. The path to 7 looks too difficult for them to get to in 2020. That does it for our look at NFL win totals for the upcoming season. For the touchback, I'm Cheyenne Hollis. Remember, take it out to the 25.